I'm going to start off this organic design with some topo lines drawn in 3D space. They're just wires. I'll select those all and go to my terrain tool. And there are several options with this tool, the first of which is a stepped model. This is something you might create out of Strathmore or cardboard when creating an architectural model. Let me undo this and I'll show you a different option. That is the meshed model. This creates a nicer, more smooth result. I'm going to turn on some volume to represent some water, as this site is on the edge of a reservoir. Now when I'm first starting out in a design, I'll typically use some of the more basic tools in Form Z just to get a quick idea of how I want my overall spaces to relate to each other and some of the general look of the building. So I'll draw a shape in here for the foundation of the main floor. I might use a glass surface style and a curvier drawing tool to start drawing my spaces. So I'll just draw a couple volumes here. A lot of times I like to use primitives when doing some initial design because they have a lot of controls that can change the shape of the object rather quickly, which lets you think more about design rather than the tools you're using. So I can take a cylinder, for example, and change the closure angle to whatever I want. I can close it down completely, or I can leave it a little bit open. I can change the radius or even the height of the object. Next, I'll take these three objects and union them into one object. Once you have some general massing done of your design, you can further refine these objects, or you can leave them on a different layer and refer back to them. I'll do sometimes a combination of both. In this case, I'll just leave them on another layer. Let me recreate that foundation. And I'll start out with a rectangle. And notice down here in my prompts palette, you'll see a lot of dimensions flying around as I'm working. If you want, you can actually key in very specific dimensions if you need a very accurate dimension. So for example, I'll type in 30.1 feet, so you can work in feet with decimal. I'll type in, for the other dimension, 70 foot, say 4 inches, so you can work in feet and inches. You can work feet and inches with fractions. You can work in English units. You have a lot of choices and flexibilities when it comes to that. I'm going to move a segment over. You can move subtopology of objects, faces, segments, points, etc. And a lot of tools will work on subtopology, like the round tool. I could round an entire object, a face, or just a segment of an object, as I'll do here. One of the tools I like to use when working in architecture is the extend tool. So you can use the extend tool to make one wall align to match another wall. You can use that to do the same thing for slope, so it's an easy way to create roof slope. So I can make the top face of this new object match this plane. You can see if I pan down here how they match. Another tool I like to use is the Deform tool. This allows a lot of different types of deforms, like a taper, twist, a bulge. A bulge, for example, could be used to make an entasis on a column, that kind of slight bulge you see in columns. I'm going to use a radial bend, and I'm going to bend it from this other end. Maybe curl it over to about there. Next, I'll rotate this a little bit. So just select the object and the rotation point. Maybe key in a angle to rotate it to. So you can see, having started from just a block, I've quickly, in maybe just 4 or 5 steps, generated a pretty curvy form. All right, next let's add a little bit more interest to the front face of this. Currently, that face is just pretty much vertical. So what I'll do is split away the segments of the top of the front of the face and the bottom. So I'll select those segments, use my derivative tool to make those segments an independent object. I'll do the same thing with the bottom segments. Next, I want to take the bottom segment and make a duplicate of it, So I'm going to drag that segment vertically. And I do need to make a copy, so let me set one copy there. And I'll just pull that up about 12 feet. Alright, so I have 3 lines that follow the shape of that original face now. I'll turn on some profiles that I have pre-drawn, and I'm going to extrude them along a path. You can see right here I'm extruding in a straight line. In this particular case, I'll use these profiles. So let me go to my sweep tool, and I'm going to do a 2-path sweep. This is taking one profile line and making it conform to 2 paths at once. So I'll pick those 2 paths. So you can see how that profile has been stretched and rotated to match the position of those 2 path lines. Next I'll do an axial sweep. This is like a 1-path sweep, and I'll pick a profile and a line. I even set an option here for scale. This is what is causing that profile to shrink as it sweeps from one end of that line to another. I'll use a different profile this time, and I'm going to set the scale to go to 20% in both directions. So that's how I create this nice overhang. I'll do the same thing for this last overhang, another axial sweep. So I'll select that object and the line it's to go on. I'll bring my original object back on and let me do a parallel offset of these top faces to get some surface thickness there. I'll just pick this face and the face of my original object. So you can see I very quickly generated a pretty organic form from my original block. Now you notice it's all kind of monotone. Since this is NURBS, I'll use a NURBS split tool to cut these shapes into multiple pieces, and then I can color these new pieces a glass-like color to create some windows in this front facade. How about some mullions? Well, NURBS have a tool called Extract Curve, and I've set an option to extract 20 curves from the surface, and if I pan around here to the side, you'll notice that those curves match that surface exactly. Alright, how about a back wall? Let me set an arc tool, and I'll use glass as my color for this, just for the sake of demonstration. And I'm going to do an offset. I've set a wall width of 4 feet, and I'll preset a height of 20 feet, so you'll see how it looks as I'm drawing it. I'll just set the points of my arc, and I'll actually do a compound arc here. Make a little kind of an S shape. Now this has control points that I can edit to tweak the shape. This saves you a little bit of time. Rather than deleting that object and redrawing it, I can just slightly adjust the shape of this as I see fit. I can change the height, I can change the center point of these arcs, I can change the amount of the arc that is shown. You can see I can stretch it out or bring it back a little bit. I can color that back to my original wall shape. I'm going to delete this because I want to show you another way you could create this same object. What I'll do is use a single segment, and I'm going to draw that segment out here. I'll extrude that upwards to about there. Next I'll take this bottom segment and move that outwards. I want this wall to taper down to a point, and I even want a smooth transition. So how about I round or radius that upper segment? So I'll set a radius of up over 100. I'll select that segment, so now you can see I have a little smooth transition there. So now I'll take my object and I'll turn on this spline I have drawn already, a little S curve, and I'll use a tool called Bend Along Curve. This actually allows you to make an object conform to a path. It's a great way to build a real complex, say a wrought iron stair railing. You could build it flat on a plane and have it conform to the railing of a spiral staircase, for example.